So welcome to our International Women's Day LinkedIn Live. We're excited to be here today and joined by our panel of fantastic speakers. I'm Louise, Otton, Head of People and Culture at Infinity Group, and today I'm joined by these four other speakers who I'm going to hand over to introduce themselves now. Gina, would you like to go first?
Sure. Morning, everyone, and thanks for the invitation. I'm Gina Timm. I'm currently working at Microsoft. I've been with the Microsoft team for about 15 years, currently in the GTM team for business applications.
Thank you, Gina. It's great to have you with us here today. Fantastic, thank you. So Lisa, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Lisa Herbert. I'm the Managing Director of Infinity Group, and really happy to be here today.
Thank you, Lisa. Great to have you as well. Emma, you're next.
Hello, everyone. My name's Emma Waas. I head up the business applications sales team here at Infinity Group.
Fantastic, thank you. And Rob, how about you?
Hi there, everyone. I'm the CRO, which means I look after sales at Infinity Group, and delighted to be here.
Brilliant, great. So as you know, Infinity Group are a forward-thinking Microsoft Gold partner. We provide award-winning managed service support and networking solutions and digital transformation. And we deliver a cutting-edge Dynamics 365 solutions to our UK client base. We are a really close-knit team, and we're built on strong values with a thirst for learning and a culture that's really created out of trust and autonomy. And we're also really proud today, especially, to be a growing technology business with over 30% female employees, when the industry average is around 25%. And we are really focused on building a diverse talent pool, focused on finding the right people that fit with our values, mission and culture. And so today we're here to discuss International Women's Day 2024, and the topic is Inspire Inclusion. When we inspire others to understand and value women, we are creating a better world. And when women themselves feel included and inspired, there's a sense of belonging, relevance and empowerment. But International Women's Day isn't just a one and done awareness day. It is something around, we're recognising the consistent collective efforts that are happening all the time that celebrate and support women's equality in the workplace. When women aren't present, we must ask ourselves, if not, and why not? And when women are discriminated against, we must call that out as well. And when the treatment of women is not equitable, we must act. And this is something that we consistently are doing all the time. It impacts everybody. We are really excited to have a conversation here today that is going to be championing the amazing role models that we've had in our lives, both male and female, and we want to celebrate that. And at an individual level, we understand that it's really important to value and seek out the inclusion of women and girls and all other diversities that bring a richness into our workplaces. And we want to share some of the knowledge and insights that we've all can bring to the table today. And at an organisational level, there are many ways that we can help ensure this is happening, to ensure that inclusion is inspired in the workplace. And some of the things that we focus on are attracting and retaining our fantastic female talent, supporting women and girls right from education right through to decision making and the leadership teams, and also celebrating how our workplaces have changed over time, how they've become more inclusive, not just around gender, but around the whole D&I agenda as well. So let's jump in then today with our discussion around what inclusion means to us. We've asked our panellists to have a think about some of our core questions today. And the first one was to think about what are the challenges you've noticed and faced and overcome to become truly included in the workplace. Gina, I was going to hand over to you first. What are your thoughts on this?
As we reflected last week, for me, I've had the fortunate opportunity to work in a number of different places. I'm here in the UK. I've spent time in the Middle East. I've spent time in South Africa. And over all of that time and those experiences, of course, is you have to be conscious of the different cultures that you're working in. And for me, I think, when it feels harder and you're in environments that might not make you comfortable, I think the learning was not to always take it personally. I think if I look back in some of those years, I was early in career. I didn't necessarily things would happen and you would just think, oh, this is just about me. That person doesn't like me, or I'm not being. So then I would take it personally, and I would, just shut people out, rather than just not taking it personally, that, environments are always different. And so I think just it's not always something that's necessarily about you. It's about understanding how do you work in those different environments. I think it was a core one for me, as I've had the opportunity to travel, to these different places.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, to understand how complex it can be when you're working in different cultures. Yeah, thank you. Has anyone else got any thoughts they'd like to share on what they've had to overcome when they're thinking about inclusion in the workplace?
Yeah, I think to echo kind of Gina's comments as well, I think kind of like imposter syndrome has been a key thing. It's very easy to take things personally. I think when you're in a room of people, and particularly if perhaps you're the only woman, sometimes kind of making sure your voice is heard has been a bit of a challenge for me. But I've been really, really lucky, especially early on in my career, where actually there've been kind of male colleagues that have really supported and made sure that my voice has been heard. So right at the beginning of my career, I never thought I'd end up in sales and marketing. I actually trained as a violinist and had to go down a different course. But I found myself kind of in a FTSE 100 company being interviewed, and I was really lucky that the sales and marketing director in that company, really made sure, that I had a voice, and that he respected kind of the ideas that I was talking about, and it really kind of boosted my confidence, helped me get that job, and really kind of kicked off the beginning of my career.
Yeah, fantastic. So you've kind of come into the technology space through a different route, haven't you? You've kind of moved across industries, and completely different industry from the music world into this space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So with the music world, and then it was a business process outsourcing company where I was working in-house, and I got a lot of exposure to technology projects that were happening there, which made me then decide to focus in technology.
Yeah, fantastic. A really interesting journey for you there, Emma. Brilliant, thank you. And Lisa, how about you? What's been your sort of story that you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I think for me, joining the IT world in the late 90s, I have seen a huge change in the landscape of the industry. I don't think we have to sort of generalize as to what it was like in the very beginning, because it was a very male-orientated environment. But I think part of these changes that I see now these days, when I look around, is that I see that's from women standing up and moving into a space at the table. But it's also that women are raising young men in a more equitable place. So moms are raising boys, and they're expecting their behavior to have changed to potentially what they've experienced in the past. I'm not naive enough to think that the fight to make space for women has stopped, but I have been really lucky to have worked in companies with cultures that champion women in the last 17 years. So I've been sitting pretty.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to hear that as well, isn't it? It's really changed. The inclusivity has definitely got better. Yeah, thank you. And Rob, how about yourself? What's been your kind of experience of this topic that we're discussing here today? How have you kind of been part of growing progressive teams in the workplace as well?
I think for me, as the least qualified person to speak on this topic on the call, having spent my career in a tower of privilege without having to deal with a lot of these problems, it's more around looking back. So my first boss, Ruth Wicks, when I entered the workforce, has been a leading light for me in terms of my whole career. But I actually look back and think about some of the treatment she experienced as an exec that I didn't know any better at the time, but was completely unacceptable. And whilst I have an accountability in terms of creating a culture and environment where everybody's equal, I'm not actually not capable of delivering that. I don't understand the challenges, and as a result, you have to lean very heavily on the people around you to tell you what that culture looks like and shape the way that you're pushing things forward. And that means having some really uncomfortable conversations sometimes. Unconscious bias is very real, but it's unconscious, which means sooner or later someone's got to be brave enough and tell you that, the way you're behaving as an individual isn't quite right, and you have to make some changes around that. So I think for me, my focus is always very much on creating a space where people can feel comfortable to raise the difficult topics, work them through, and then you have a lot of people around you that do understand the problem space a lot better than I do, and can make sure what we're doing is taking us forward.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think it's really key, isn't it, being able to call it out when you need to. That's one of the biggest, hardest conversations to have sometimes, isn't it?
And enormously scary for people. You know, I've seen situations where people don't want to raise a challenge because they think it might adversely affect their career or something like that, and that's the stuff that's really difficult to fix, but has got to be done.
Yeah. And it's often on something, like you said, that's so unconscious that someone's not aware of, that then makes it even more complicated to call out. Yeah, absolutely. I think sort of adding to all the things that you've all said would be just knowing, that it's okay to ask for, different ways of working, and being able to work in a flexible way can be really helpful for people who've perhaps got care responsibilities out of the home. I think that's the journey I've seen that's really helped me in my career, is being able to work in a way that allows me to juggle two sides of my lives. So what we've heard then really is, the challenges have been cultural challenges, living in different countries, how things have changed over time, and that, people have, workplaces have really, really made a conscious effort to change and make things more inclusive. And that, there's a squiggly career path often for people, isn't it? You're kind of moving in and out of different industries, and it's not always a straight road, and it's not always obvious when you start out where that might lead to. And having champions that support you along the way can be really, really important. So one of the other things we were talking about before was thinking about inspiration. Has anybody got anything they'd like to share around characters or female figures or particular women that they admire that's inspired them in the workplace? And I was just wondering if anybody wanted to share some of their thoughts around that. I know, Gina, you had some thoughts on that as well.
I'm happy to go.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, I think for me, I think we are this week, during this International Women's Day, we're going to hear a lot of stories about, people like, Michelle Obama, for example, who has inspired so many across the world. I think for me, I try and take strength from the everyday heroes who are all around us. We work with them today on this call. We socialize with them. And I think for me, some of these include the Jasmines. And not because she's a princess in Aladdin or an heir to a kingdom, but because she refused to be silent when it really mattered, because she had the courage to speak against the authority and challenge the convention. And what about all of the Bells? And not because she married a prince, because it was because of her curiosity, her empathy, and her ability to see beyond face value, and she genuinely fell in love with the beast. And what about the Honors? And again, not because she's a princess or because she lived in a castle in Arendelle with her sister Elsa, but she absolutely had her sister's back, and she had it unconventionally. And what about the Rapunzels? And again, it's not because she had amazing hair, because she dared to go where she was told was off limits, but she just went anyway. And then my favorites, and I think this is close for me, is the Cinderellas. And not because she was beautiful, but because no matter how hard it was, and no matter how hard she tried and how hard she had to work, she never, ever, ever forgot the value of kindness. And I think what matters to all of us, all of the time, is we need to help build an environment for everybody that has traditionally female qualities, which are hard work, empathy, and kindness. So for me, it's not that one person's, but it's all of those people that we work with every day, and they all bring those different quality to us, and they just make it a more inclusive an environment that we all want to be part of.
I love that. It's brilliant. I wish storybooks were written like that. It's much more empowering, isn't it, when you pull out the real meaning behind it. I think that's really, really powerful. Does anybody got any thoughts on that in terms of like what we want to see in a what are the brilliant traits that the females bring to the workplace? How do we help support that more?
I think for me, as you were mentioning all of those, I was going through my work people that we work with and assigning, this one's a Rapunzel, this one's a Belle, this one's because I think I really like that analogy. I think I would like to champion the women who send their husbands and their children, whether boys or girls, their sisters, off to the workplace and then get to receive what the workplace puts back into the house. I often talk to colleagues and know that much of the stress and anxiety that they have in their normal days is going to go back into the home. And we have a bunch of invisible supporters for our work colleagues here that are supporting people that are giving their best at Infinity, and I know we affect their home lives. So I'd like to champion those people that we don't get to see at Infinity, the invisible workforce.
Yeah, it's a great point, that, isn't it? It has such a knock-on effect, doesn't it, when you're taking your work life back to the home, and having that champion at home can be really helpful. Yeah, I love that. So if we were thinking about, when we take that maybe a step further, what are the changes you think you'd like to see in the future that would help make the workplace even more inclusive? We've already seen so much change and so many things moving in the right direction, but what else do you think would be helpful? And some of the topics that came up when we were talking about this last week were things around, obviously we've got gender pay gap, which is a hot topic all the time, but there's other things behind that, which sort of building on what you just said there, Lisa, as well, around flexibility. So we know that flexible working is a right now for everybody you have a right to request that from day one in a job, and that the CIPD have shown that 40% of organisations have seen an increase in flexible working requests since the pandemic. And then we've also talked briefly about like the imbalance of duties outside the home, having just touched on that just now. The research shows that we still find that there is an imbalance of how much home duties are performed by women versus men, and just it'd be interesting to hear what people's thoughts are on that, and what do we notice in our own personal lives around supporting that, and also giving managers the confidence and the capability to be able to have that empathy for people's different working styles. In a hybrid world, everybody's got slightly different ways of working and requests, so opening it up to you guys, really, what do you notice? Which of those topics, when you think about flexible working, perhaps the imbalance, or perhaps supporting our managers to have that ability to be empathetic towards other people's situations, what do you notice is important, and how can we help make better changes for the future?
I don't mind going first. I think the main thing is just around the comfort to have the conversation about when life gets difficult, or school runs drive a bus through your world, or you've got some stuff you need to work on at home. And I think in a lot of cases people won't come forward and have that discussion because they think that it reflects badly on them, or it's not in line with working culture. So I think it's just a question of openness at all levels of the organisation around the fact that people do have a life that gets in the way, and that's okay, and working patterns aren't 9 till 5 anymore, and making sure that that's supportive. And it is obviously more of a woman's remit at the moment, but I do see that balancing out a little bit. But the main challenge for me is that people think it reflects badly on them, and then actually you end up in a position where life isn't going so well and work's not going so well, whereas actually an objective discussion in the middle around how you put some structures in place for the individual to allow them to do both is probably the piece that needs some work. And that's a top-down cultural message for any organisation for me.
Yeah, it's really key, isn't it? It's all about giving trust, but also demonstrating the trust back as well. And if it works both ways, and those conversations are a lot easier to have, but it's got to be clear that that's the cultural norm in the first place. Yeah.
Sure. I think just to Rob's point, I've learned that with great line management support, to take the space to allow more empathy into business decisions, because life, right? The more you experience, the more you know what it's like to juggle children and single parenthood and financial difficulties and grief and stress, and all of these experiences should make you more empathetic. So I think my role that I can bring to the party is the ability to help make decisions from a big picture perspective with empathy, but also help our managers do it without being taken advantage of. Because I think that's the trick, is the balance between the two.
Yeah, and it's really hard to get that right sometimes, isn't it? And especially for managers who might be new into management as well, not necessarily knowing how to open up the conversation can be challenging. Anyone else got any thoughts or they'd like to share around that?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I've kind of learned that it's okay if your career's not linear. I think with childcare responsibilities and stuff, where women do sometimes have to kind of take a step back from their career a little bit. I guess there's always that nervousness that can I get back to where I was and continue on progressing. And I think within my team, it's just making sure that when there are opportunities that are coming up, just making sure that people maybe who've kind of taken a step back, who might be qualified or experienced to be able to do that role, they're being considered as well for these things. So I think it's just making sure they're having a voice, and there's transparency around opportunities that are coming up as well.
Yeah, no, really important. So, yeah, thank you, Emma. So that's, I think what we're hearing really is, knowing that it's okay to call things out. It's okay, we need to support our managers to really help have these important conversations when they come up, and also to understand everybody's coming at it from a different pathway or different background. Okay, so shall we move on to our final question now, which we asked everybody to think about: what one piece of advice would you give to young people starting out in the workplace today, knowing what you know now and your experience and where you've come from? What would that be for future starters? And Emma, if we come back to you first, perhaps, what would that be for you?
Yeah, so I think, organisational culture is a really important thing to try and gauge. Sometimes it's quite hard from an interview, but, kind of find out about the organisation, how many women are in there, how many women are progressing, how many women are on the senior management team and the board. I think it gives you a good picture as to, whether there are kind of, the opportunity to progress as a woman in an organisation. So I think that's an important thing from my perspective to look out for.
Yeah. So kind of do your research, understand what the company's like, the structure, the setup in terms of who sits on the board, who's on the leadership team. Yeah, it's a really good piece of advice, that. Thank you.
I think if you find yourself kind of in a role when there is kind of, you feel there's inequality and the culture's not going to change as well, to kind of move away quickly, because there are good organisations out there, like Infinity, that invest a lot of time into their culture and effort into their culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Lisa, how about yourself? What advice have you got?
I think that one shouldn't be tethered by the career you think you should have, because sometimes the world works in mysterious ways, and you get sent on paths that are all part of your experience that'll make you be the person that you should be one day. And so changing careers is not a train smash. Trying and taking a risk in a company, like Emma says, with a different culture is not a train smash. Many of us have a very checkered experience with the workplace, and we probably didn't do what we thought we were going to do when we came out of university, and putting that pressure on yourself when you're so young doesn't give you the time to enjoy it. And the other thing is really, like, age is just a number. I think we're incredibly lucky to work in a country that we do, where there are a lot of women who would in other countries or cultures have aged out, for instance, to use a term, and we still have energy and really a place at the table. That for me has been a brilliant experience. Thank
you, Lisa. Yeah, really important. Okay, Gina, how about you? What sort of what one piece of advice have you got for young people today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of advice and in the theme of inclusion, I think, as I watch my 16-year-old introvert start, interviewing for schools, etc., I know at some point she's going to start, interviewing and coming into the working world. And just for all of us to be conscious of how introverts and extroverts show up differently in the working environment. At the end of the day, my advice to her is, just be you, don't try and be somebody else. And, you do have to be prepared going to an interview or doing something like this. I can only imagine if Kiara was sitting here today doing something like this would be so hard for her. But if she prepared and she was able to tell the stories, it would be a lot easier. So, my advice to, early in careers is it's much easier to tell a story to get your message across. And I think all of us can be, conscious about where people feel comfortable and where they don't feel comfortable. And if we better understand the different diverse, personality types, I think we can just be more inclusive. And not putting the introverts on the spot and, but just giving them time to digest information and, interact with us in different ways. I think will just make it a much easier transition for them into different environments.
Yeah, I love that. It's really important. Just being mindful of different personality styles and strengths. Yeah,
exactly.
It's really key.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gina. And Rob, how about you?
I think it's a bravery message for me. I think a lot of people stay in jobs because they're worried about, not having the full year on their CV or anything like that. So to build on what Emma said about there being plenty of good employers out there, be a bit ruthless if the culture's not right or you're seeing behaviours and practices that don't resonate with you or make you uncomfortable. Dump that employer because they'll have the conversation with you and maybe they'll learn from it. But also, that gap on your CV or that reduced employment term, you will get asked a question about it in your next job. But that's a story that should be told. And if that story and experience makes the person that's interviewing you uncomfortable, then you probably don't want to work for that business either. So, don't be afraid to be a bit ruthless with your employers and make sure that they're creating environments that support you. You've got, 50 years of work to go and meet a lot of new companies and new employers. So you have a duty to yourself to make sure that you're having the most fun and you're looked after and you're developed in a way that makes you happy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, so being able to be brave and take a risk and know when something's not right, move on if you need to. Yeah, really important. And I think I'd probably add to that what everything you guys have said would be to know what your purpose is. So you don't always know what that is straight away, but once you've kind of worked out, well, what is it that's important to you? What do you love doing? Be clear on what that is and really go for it and use that as your kind of guiding North Star as such to always come back to what your purpose is. And because then you can set your boundaries, you can be focused on what you really want to achieve and find the champions and the people that are going to support you. And also be someone who does that for other people. So we were talking about our company values and confidence is one of the Infinity company values. And we talk about that a lot internally around how can you support others to feel confident through your actions as well. So being that champion for others as well, and as well as finding them. So we've heard a lot there about advice in terms of what we can offer young people in the workplace, looking at culture, looking at organisational structure, really understanding how can be inclusive of everybody, and being aware of different personalities and strengths, and having those difficult conversations when we need to. So the last question then that we asked everybody to think about was a little bit desert island disc style. We asked you all to think of one recommendation of either a source of information or a book or a podcast or something that you think would be inspiring for other people to hear. Have you all managed to think of something that you think would be useful to share with our listeners today? And I'll maybe come to Emma first. Would you like to share your recommendation?
Yeah, so for me, there is a fantastic TED talk by a lady called Gabriella Schuster, who was actually a corporate vice president within Microsoft. I had the pleasure of actually seeing her live once at Inspire, and she's a really, really inspirational woman. She's also done a lot of work with the Women in Technology network, but in particular, this TED talk is all about allyship. And what organisations can be doing to promote that, to promote inclusivity. And I think since she's done the TED Talk, she's actually gone to create a framework as well for organisations on how you can make sure that everyone in your organisation is empowered as well. So I think those two resources are definitely worth everyone watching, whether you're male or female. I think it really kind of highlights some of the challenges that still exist today and what we can do to overcome.
Brilliant, thank you. I've not heard of that one. We can share the links to these perhaps afterwards as well. It would be useful for everybody. Thank you, Emma. Gina, how about yourself?
You caught me unawares now, and I'm thinking off the top of my head. So, but what I would have to say,
I'm Googling as well, Gina. So.
Well, my advice would be, going back to our everyday heroes, is I would just say take the time, go and watch as many Disney movies as you can. Take time with your family. We do it every weekend. It's time together, and go and get a couple of those learnings from those everyday heroes that we know about.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you. So watch Disney movies and take the inspiration from them.
Family, spend time together. Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Elisa, how about yourself?
I think for me, and I've been trying to do this lately, is get the opportunity to listen to the younger people in the organization. As you rise through the ranks, you don't always have the opportunity to speak to those new starters who are really entering the workplace. And sometimes their point of view can really help you, not only with your own teenagers, but they can really help you understand what their challenges are within that workplace. So you hear it from the horse's mouth instead of trying to manifest it yourself and understand that gap that does come with age.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? Especially as organisations grow and perhaps and being hybrid and remote, the time together with the new people coming in is so valuable, isn't it? Because you don't always have that natural interaction as much as perhaps we did if we were in the office all the time. So spending time having those conversations be really, really powerful. Thank you. And Rob, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd just recommend that people go and talk to the resources that are around them. Go and find a woman that's worked big corporate in the 80s and 90s and actually go and understand at a level of detail what the culture was actually like back then. Then understand the reality of what it takes to succeed in an environment like that. And then the thing that will shock you is when you start going, actually, are there bits and pieces of that still exist now? And the truth is they actually do. And I just think there's it's really tough now. There's loads that can be done to make things better. But I do think there's a need for people to look back and actually understand just how horrifying the 80s and 90s were for women in the workplace and make sure it isn't forgotten. So that would be my advice.
I like that. It's true, isn't it? I mean, how far we've come, but yet how much more we can do, I think is key as well. And actually, I've just literally read a book which felt like quite timely called Untamed by a lady called Glennon Doyle, and it talks about how to stop pleasing others. It's a bit around people pleasing, especially for female leaders, and how often people feel like they need to be doing everything right by others and putting everybody first before themselves. And I think it's quite important to be able to remember that sometimes you need to be able to see the bigger picture and take a step back and think what's right for the greater good, and how can we help make sure that we are putting ourselves where we need to be and not holding ourselves back as well. So I thought I'd recommend that as a book just because I happened to have just read it. So lots of useful tips and tricks there for everybody to take away, and we can share the links to some of those resources as well. Well, I just want to say thank you very much, everybody, for your time. It's been an honour to have Gina, Timm with us as well today, especially from Microsoft. And thank you, everybody, Rob, Emma, Lisa, for giving us an hour of your time today to have this conversation.
Thanks, Louise.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks for having us.
As part of this year's International Women's Day, I would like to celebrate a very important lady in my life, without whom I wouldn't be where I am today. She's always encouraged me, told me I can achieve anything I want to if I'm determined and work hard. She's always believed in me, even when others might have doubted me, even when I've doubted myself and my abilities. And on occasions when things aren't going as I'd hope, she offers her legendary advice: you can only do your best. She's there to support me when I'm struggling or unsure what direction to take. She's also there to celebrate with me when I've been successful, usually with gin. So, the person I'd like to celebrate, because she has always inspired me, is my mum, Sue. My mum came from a family where you didn't worry about educating girls because their role was to get married and have children. How times have changed. She didn't realise her dreams, so she was even more determined that I should achieve mine. She worked many hours, often doing jobs I wouldn't want to do, just to afford for me to realise my dream of going to university. And she still supports me today, so thank you, Mum. If I was to offer one piece of advice to young women joining the workplace today, it would be to believe in yourself. It's amazing what you can achieve if you're determined and work hard. And, as my mum would say, you can only do your best.
So, who has been a woman who I admire or who has inspired me, and why? So, for me, it's not just one woman; it's many, many women, and I can't single one person out. But these women collectively are not superheroes in capes. They're not celebrities. They're not the loudest people in the room, but they do demonstrate that strength lies in the quiet resilience that they show through unwavering kindness for others and their consistency of what they do and their determination to achieve what they want to achieve. They're the ones who get up even on the toughest of days to ensure that everyone else's needs are met, and that their love for others is what keeps them steady during challenging times for themselves. And when they are facing their own challenges, they are able to be vulnerable. They know how to ask for help, and they can therefore face their challenges head on because they know how to put their hands up and say, can you support me? And that courage is what really inspires me. And during all this, they all are always graceful. They're always respectful of others. They're the ones that lift me up. They don't beat me down. And they also don't gossip and they don't shame others. They spend their time really celebrating others, and they demonstrate compassion for others as well. And these women have really shown me that when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade with it, and you add a splash of gin sometimes and a bit of fun in there. And they're the ones that always give me hope that I've got it. And I really hope that one day my daughter finds her tribe of women that do this for her. And if I could give one piece of advice to other young women entering the workplace now, it would be to find your champions. Find the people that are going to lift you up and do the same for others. At the end of the day, being a good, considerate, kind person will take you a long, long way. And remember, it's okay that not everybody is going to like everybody, but we need to find and invest in the relationships that are positive for us. Thank you.
I wanted to talk about the woman who has probably had the most influence on me in my life. And without sounding trite, it is my own mother. Interestingly enough, I never had grandmothers to benchmark my own mom, as both my parents lost their parents young. So my mom lost her mom when she was 21, and I wasn't born yet. And so for us, our conversation has always been around how do you benchmark your own success as a parent when you don't have your own parents to be able to benchmark yourself against. So when I finished my BSc geology, I realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, and I got into IT. But at the same time, I had a passion for accounting, and I started a BCom through distance learning. And because my mom was worried about me working and trying to study at the same time as an adult with a full-time job, she decided she would accompany me and do the same kind of thing. And she, without even having A levels, she hadn't finished her schooling. She started in 1996, and she was 46 when she started doing a BA archaeology, which she then converted into a BA Biblical Archaeology, and she took that up until Masters, and it took her 6 years to complete this degree. While she was doing that, she was looking after a family. She was studying as a mature student, which was really tough. There were many long nights and many loads of tears as you try and apply yourself to theses and writing papers when you don't have that ability and you don't use it in your work environment. So from a master's perspective, when she achieved that, she was over 50. And when I find things are tough, especially when it comes to actively studying while you have a full-time job, I think about her plugging away night after night with being a mature student, and it just humbly reminds me of the opportunities that I have that she didn't, and she still followed through from adversity.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.